This is Rosen Institute's Your Law Firm, where Lee Rosen and Ned Days cover management, marketing, finance, and new technologies for building the practice you deserve. Here's Lee Rosen.
It's good to be with you today from Bali, where it's still all good, but sometimes it's just heads down to get the work done. And that's been us since we got here on Bali. We're getting things done, but we're doing it in a warm, beautiful setting while sitting in a lounge chair and looking out at the ocean. I'm constantly reading articles about how digital nomad life isn't a life of sitting on the beach. It's often really working, getting things done. But truth be told, sometimes it is a life of sitting on the beach. Yes, work is being done, but it's a pretty great way to do it. Bali is working out for us.
It's time for your tech tip. When I got out of college, I put my degree to use working for a shady auto sales training company that preyed on unemployed people. A big part of my job involved sending fax blasts to promote our service and calling people on the telephone to purchase newspaper advertisements. Not exactly relevant skills in today's job market, but that's a story for another time. I was kind of an underachiever. My high-flying friends also had sketchy jobs, but at more profitable, sketchy companies. A good friend of mine worked for a giant tract home developer in the area, not in construction but in their office as part of the marketing department. We were grabbing something to eat one evening and he told me about a rather interesting part of his job. In addition to whatever boring back office stuff he was doing, every Monday morning he would drive to the courthouse and pay the fine. The fine for what exactly? Well, this developer put out signs promoting their homes. Lots of signs everywhere. In most areas, there are rules about where you can and can't put promotional signs, and on city, state, and other public property, sending a guy around with a truck full of signs advertising your hastily constructed townhouses is a violation and comes with a fine. But as this company saw it, that was just part of doing business. The fine was a marketing expense. It was so much a part of their approach that they had a system in place to facilitate it. Every Monday morning, like clockwork, they sent somebody to pay the fine the same way you or I fuel up the car or buy groceries for the week. Now, I'm not encouraging you to break rules or violate laws or just generally be tacky because you decide that the juice is worth the squeeze. What I am suggesting, though, is that as you look at building the practice you want, you reframe the way you look at roadblocks and impediments. There's very little that can't be done. The question is always, what's the cost to do it? When we look at the kind of service we want to deliver to our clients or the way we want to interact with our staff or the courthouse or whatever agencies or authorities we deal with, or creating and investing in technology, we tend to A, simply look at what's being offered to us instead of what we actually want, and B, assume that any variation in cost outside of what's on the sticker means something is a bad idea. We're often scared off or dissuaded from implementing a new system or automating something or buying an expensive service or piece of software simply because there is a cost involved. It might be money, it might be time, it might be pushback from the team or clients. And at the first sign of resistance, we buckle and we decide not to go any further. Sometimes it's the opposite. We see that manual attention will be required and we assume the plan is far too costly without actually looking at the numbers. We see that no one else is willing to try something and we just assume it can't be done or that it's prohibitively expensive or complicated or time-consuming without sitting down, adding the cost of the fine to the unit price of the yard sign, and making an assessment. It's worth evaluating the cost and the benefit of the options that seem off limits, the doors that are actively closed in front of you. This might be something trivially simple. You are looking at a subscription for software that includes 100 credits per month, but you will probably need 200, and extra credits are expensive. Well, how expensive exactly? What value are you getting from the service for the price that you end up charging? Maybe your cost is 3 times the sticker price, but instead of reflexively balking, cost it out and see where you land. Maybe extra credits aren't even listed as an option. What if you email the company and ask, I need something you don't have listed. Can you do it? Sometimes it's a matter of reframing the true cost of something. I tend to have a knee-jerk reaction to nickeling and diming and hidden fees. It's irrational, but in my head, I would rather pay $100 for something that says it's $100 than the same thing that's advertised at $50 and ends up having $25 of hidden fees. When we expanded our firm offices into executive suites, all of the extra fees for drinks and copies and key cards and lobby listings drove me up the wall. But when I started just building in that what we would pay for our executive suites would be about 20% higher than the sticker price on the lease, I realized it was still worth it for us compared to a traditional office space, and it stopped bothering me. The sketchy home builder determined that not only was the cost of the fine worth it, but the fact that nobody else was willing to play that game meant they had the illegally placed sign market all to themselves. Again, what this says about the ethics of the home builder and the city of Jacksonville that this was allowed to continue is for you to decide. Damage to your reputation with your peers, employees, clients, and the community is an enormous cost. The point I'm trying to drive home is that when it comes to the work you want to do, the service you want to deliver, and the business you want to create, you can have what it is you want if you are willing to pay the price. Now, a lot of times we very rightly determine that things aren't worth the cost. The price we would have to pay means we can't stay profitable, or the ratio of what we get versus what we pay isn't justified. But know that for sure. Don't assume that a penalty means something is impossible. I'm Ned Days, and that's your tech tip.
And now for your moment of concise advice. Starting your own firm or making a big career move, it can feel a lot like driving across a continent without a map. The idea of not knowing every detail in advance, not knowing what's coming or exactly where you're going, it can be paralyzing. But let me share a story that changed my perspective. Driving across Panama, which is a relatively short drive, it's a drive across both a country and a continent. And we learned as we did that continental drive that it's okay to move forward even when you don't have it all figured out. Lisa and I were fascinated by the Panama Canal, which cuts right through the country. And after hours spent at the visitor center on the Pacific side, we decided to head to the Atlantic side. It cost us $75 for an Uber that took us across the continent to Cologne. And we went to the visitor center and we hung out for quite a few hours. And as the day wound down and the visitor center got ready to close, we discovered something unsettling. We were sort of out in the middle of nowhere, and there was no way to get an Uber to get a ride back to the other side of the continent. There was no phone signal. Our phone simply didn't work out there in the jungle, and we had no plan, no way out of the jungle and back into town. And before we knew it, standing there waiting to figure this thing out, it started to get dark, and all of the other tourists were gone. They had taken their tour buses. The employees had all left. We looked at one another, just the two of us sitting there, and wondered what we would do as the jungle got slowly quieter and quieter. But here's what happened. It worked out. A security guard was standing off in one corner. She was going to be out there all night, and she agreed to give us a 30-minute ride to the train station. And the next thing you know, we were headed back across the country. Being without a plan, not knowing exactly what we were going to do, not having a phone signal to call Uber, it forced us to trust our ability to adapt. We learned that even in those situations, being out in the jungle after all the people had left, we learned that things come together, even if it's not exactly in the way that you expected. I think we had expected to be able to click on the button and get an Uber. Now, I accept that our brief moment of being stuck in the jungle is not really that big a problem, and it seems like being stuck in the jungle is a lot less risky than quitting a job to start your own law firm. But I think they have more in common than you might think. There are real risks to being stranded in the jungle. That's a serious place. And there are real risks, admittedly, to launching a law firm. But here's the thing. It's all manageable. In fact, I would argue that the jungle presents a greater real danger than running a law firm. I think that holds true in other situations in our legal careers, that the jungle is more dangerous than making a shift in your career. Switching practice areas or relocating or starting your own firm, all of it feels risky, especially if you don't have every detail locked down, but ultimately, you can always figure it out. We are good problem solvers. That's what we do. If things don't go as planned, you'll find another way forward. Life and this profession that we're all in It offers more resilience and second chances than I think a lot of us think. We're highly educated professionals. We have lots of positive experiences to draw on. We have connections. We have resources. We have good ideas. We can figure things out. We are resilient. Now, there was a time when I didn't believe that. I wouldn't make a move without an airtight plan. But that mindset, that kept me from trying new things. The truth is, we don't always know what it's going to look like when we get there, but you're going to figure it out as you go along the way. It's okay to take the leap to get started without seeing the whole path in advance. You don't need every answer before you get going. So if you've been hesitating, remember this. The safety net, it's stronger than you think. The worst case scenario is rarely as bad as it seems. The best case scenario, it's everything you've dreamed of and more. Go ahead, do it, take the first step. Trust that you'll figure it out when you get there, because you will. That's your moment of concise advice. Wrapping up from Bali, thanks for spending a few minutes with me and Ned today. We hope you have a great weekend and an even better week next week. Keep plugging away, moving forward, and getting things done. You're on the right track. You'll get there, I promise. We're all in this together, and together we build better practices through better marketing, better management, and better technology. Until next time, I'm Lee Rosen.
Thanks for listening to Your Law Firm. Subscribe to the Friday File at roseninstitute.com and join thousands of lawyers focused on working on, instead of in, their practices. You'll find safe, successful, actionable approaches for transforming your firm. Sign up for free at roseninstitute.com.